the internet basically froze. You
Yeah.
know, the metaphorical cameras flashed, the crowd just went totally silent, and just like that, Hollywood had an absolute brand new obsession.
Oh, it was everywhere. You couldn't escape it.
You really couldn't. I mean, we are talking about the Boy Meets World open marriage confession nobody expected.
Which is still just, wow, total whiplash.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to Starscope Report.
Yeah.
You know, join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals.
Right. From red carpet surprises to those crazy social media controversies, we just really dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
We do. And if you grew up in the 1990s, you probably, took at least some of your life advice from a television screen.
Oh, absolutely.
And specifically, you probably took it from Mr. Feeny
Yeah.
on Boy Meets World. I mean, he was the ultimate moral compass.
So the wise, steady mentor behind that iconic wooden fence.
Exactly. Just dispensing these perfectly packaged, incredibly comforting nuggets of wisdom whenever the world got confusing.
It was this pristine, completely untouchable image of authority.
Right, stability. So
Yeah.
when the actor who played him, William Daniels, and his wife, Bonnie Bartlett, who, by the way, played Dean Bullender on the exact same show,
Which fans loved.
they loved it. But when they suddenly became the center of a totally shocking viral internet moment recently, the collective whiplash was just intense. I mean, fans were suddenly confronted with a massive confession about their decades-spanning, incredibly painful open marriage.
It was really the ultimate collision of a beloved, sanitized childhood memory and the very gritty, complex reality of actual adulthood.
Totally.
And the public reaction was so visceral because, well, we want our TV mentors to be perfect.
Right, we want them to just be Mr. Feeny all the time. But today, we are taking a deep dive into the reality behind Hollywood's longest-lasting living marriage. Because William Daniels and Bonnie Bartlett are nearing an astonishing 75 years of marriage.
75 years. It's almost unheard of.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how they managed to survive not just the entertainment industry, but, well, each other.
Yeah, that's the real trick.
We are looking at a huge stack of sources today. Entertainment news from the past few years, some recent exclusive interviews, including this massive Daily Mail piece from May 2026.
That was a great interview.
It was so revealing. And we've also got excerpts from Bonnie's incredibly candid 2023 memoir, Middle of the Rainbow.
And, the goal here is to just strip away the sensationalized clickbait.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a story about some scandalous Hollywood arrangement or a, salacious swinging lifestyle.
Oh, no, not at
It's a deeply human case study on endurance, profound grief, and how a relationship actually evolves, or, how it survives its own mistakes over 7 decades.
Because when you hear 75-year marriage, you immediately imagine this flawless fairy tale, don't you?
Oh, sure. You picture two people who met, fell instantly in love, and just never looked at another person again.
Right. But Bonnie's memoir completely shatters that illusion. Okay, let's unpack this. She wrote that early in their marriage, way back in the 1950s, they engaged in what she actually called a little bit of an open marriage.
And you really have to, mentally strip away the 1950s stereotype here.
Yeah, forget the whole Leave It to Beaver thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We aren't talking about the suburban white picket fence 50s. There were young actors living in New York.
Right.
And Bonnie describes it in the sources as a time when things were, quote, very free. It was this bohemian, highly experimental era in their social circle. There was, in her own words, a lot of sex and people doing all kinds of things.
And she didn't hold back on her own participation in that either. I mean, she revealed she had a months-long affair in 1959 with an actor she actually described as, wait for it, slightly boring.
Ouch.
Right? Which is such a brutally honest detail to include in a memoir.
It really is.
But the detail that caught my attention the most was her emotional state at the time. She wrote that she felt absolutely zero guilt about it.
Not at all.
None. She didn't feel tied to fidelity, and she claimed Bill didn't either. But then, fast forward a bit to the 1970s, and the dynamic completely flips. Bill has an affair with a New York-based producer, and Bonnie is completely devastated.
Yeah, that was the breaking point.
She realizes there's a total lack of commitment, and she decides she can no longer tolerate an open marriage of any kind.
That shift is really the psychological core of their early years, because she notes that the lack of commitment eventually brought a tremendous amount of pain with any transgression, with any extramarital thing.
Right.
The realization just hit her that this theoretical freedom they were playing with in their 20s was actually inflicting deep emotional wounds in their 40s.
The novelty totally wore off.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
reality of being untethered was just exhausting.
But I'm struggling to wrap my head around this timeline, though. Like, if I find out my partner is having an affair and I'm devastated to the point of realizing our entire foundation is compromised, I'm calling a lawyer.
Right. Most people would.
I'm not shrugging and sticking around for another 50 years. Was this just apathy? Were they just, I don't know, too busy to get divorced? How does a marriage possibly survive a decade-spanning open phase that ultimately leaves one partner totally devastated? Isn't that usually just the end of the story?
Well, what's fascinating here is how they clarified this exact dynamic in their May 2026 interview with the Daily Mail.
Oh.
The media had essentially painted this as a formal, negotiated, open marriage contract. Because, we view everything through a modern lens, right?
Yeah, we imagine they sat down with a therapist and mapped it out.
Exactly. We imagine they established clear boundaries. But Bonnie clarified that it was entirely unspoken.
Wait, entirely?
There were zero rules. She literally said, Bill and I never sit down and make rules. We never sit down and talk about these things.
Which honestly sounds like a recipe for total disaster. I mean, an unspoken arrangement is just waiting for someone to cross an invisible line.
And it was the cause of their pain, undoubtedly. But, paradoxically, as the sources reveal, it was also the exact mechanism that kept them from officially breaking up.
How so?
Well, think of their early marriage, like a skyscraper built with architectural sway.
Okay.
In an earthquake, a rigid building shatters, right? But a building designed to bend will survive the tremors.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Because they hadn't built rigid rules into their marriage in the 50s, they had enough sway to survive a turbulent decade without legally breaking. If Bill was away working for a year, his life went one way, hers went another.
Wow.
But because there was no hard contract to officially breach, they didn't have that dramatic, definitive breaking point.
That's wild.
Bonnie basically said it was simply a very painful season they had to wade through, mostly because they got together so young.
Right. She was only 18.
Yeah, 18, and Bill was her first boyfriend. They essentially had to do their growing up while already married to each other.
That makes a strange kind of sense, actually. They didn't blow up the marriage because they hadn't built walls rigid enough to shatter in the first place.
Exactly.
But hey, surviving an era of unspoken flexibility is one thing. Actually wanting to stay married after the dust settles is another. And that's not even the wildest part of their story. If you're loving these Hollywood twists so far, make sure you're subscribed because we've got even crazier stories ahead.
Oh yeah, you're going to want to hear what happens next.
Because if fidelity wasn't the initial glue holding them together, what was the actual bedrock that kept them anchored?
Well, to understand their foundation, you really have to look at how they met and, more importantly, what they went through shortly after.
Right.
Their origin story is deeply grounded. They met at Northwestern University. Bill was attending on the GI Bill after returning from serving as an Army radio DJ in Italy during World War II.
Which means he already had a tremendous amount of life experience compared to the average, fresh-faced college student.
Oh, definitely. And Bonnie was from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And her first impression of him is so charmingly shallow.
Oh my gosh, yes. She thought she was too tall for him.
Right.
Right.
Because he was 5'7". But she was totally captivated by his leather jacket.
I love that quote. She said, "Oh, I loved his leather jacket. It was really exciting."
The leather jacket won out over the height difference, obviously.
It always did.
They got married on June 30, 1951, right after she graduated, and they tackled New York together. But the bedrock you're asking about, it wasn't formed during those bohemian New York days. It was forged in 1961, exactly a decade into their marriage.
Right. And this is a really, really dark chapter in the sources. Bonnie gave birth to a son, William Jr., who died just 24 hours later.
Yeah. And the psychological impact of losing a child is profound in any era, obviously. But you have to view this through the lens of 1961.
Things were so different then.
Society just did not have the language, the therapy culture, or the support systems to openly process that kind of grief.
No.
There was no concept of holding space for trauma. People were largely expected to just endure the unthinkable in total silence, pack up the nursery, and go back to work.
Which means the only person on earth who truly understands what you were going through in that moment is your spouse. That kind of shared, isolated grief either completely destroys a couple or it forces a bond that just cannot be broken. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. A 75-year marriage isn't a pristine diamond formed under pressure,
Right.
It's more like forged iron. It's strengthened exactly where it was repeatedly struck. And Bonnie actually said in a 2024 interview that this devastating loss ended up being the, quote, best thing that ever happened to us.
Which is a statement that sounds almost impossible to comprehend until you trace the causality.
Exactly. Because that specific pain led them directly to adoption. They adopted their 2 sons, Michael and Robert, who are now in their 60s.
Yeah.
And Bonnie made it clear that those boys became the absolute joy of their lives. So if their early marriage was a building with a lot of sway, adopting their sons poured a massive, immovable, concrete foundation.
Beautifully put.
It shifted them from 2 independent actors drifting in and out of each other's orbits to a permanent, anchored family.
And they balanced that immense personal grief and growth with shared professional triumphs, too. They weren't just co-parenting. They were true partners navigating a notoriously brutal industry.
And they absolutely conquered that industry together.
They did. I mean, look at 1986. They were starring together on the massive hit medical drama St. Elsewhere, playing a married couple, Dr. Mark Craig and Ellen Craig.
Such a classic show.
And that year, they made television history. They became only the second married couple to win acting Emmys on the exact same night.
Just imagine the emotional weight of that moment. To share the silent, isolating trauma of losing a child in 1961, and then 25 years later to be standing on a stage holding Emmys side by side, recognized by your peers for playing a married couple.
It gives you chills.
It really does. It paints a picture of 2 lives woven together so tightly that you couldn't untangle them even if you wanted to.
It's a tapestry of shared survival. Bill framed this perfectly when he said they essentially had 3 different marriages to each other over the decades.
Oh, I like that.
The couple navigating the freewheeling 1950s was not the couple mourning in the 1960s, and neither was the couple sweeping the Emmys in the 1980s.
Or the couple starring on Boy Meets World in the 1990s.
Right.
I mean, people loved their chemistry when Bonnie guest starred as the college dean who ultimately marries Mr. Feeny. The fans were essentially watching a real 40-plus-year marriage play out on screen.
That's why their cultural footprint is so massive.
Yes. Which is exactly why, when the recent headlines about their open marriage dropped, the sources noted that fans on Reddit were having very real, grounded reactions.
Oh, Reddit must have lost its mind.
They did. One person said their heart completely dropped when they saw William Daniels trending, assuming the worst, only to feel massive relief when they found out it was just a story about his marriage.
Yeah.
Another user jokingly commented, "Feeny smashed the dean." Right. The public just feels deeply invested in them. But later in this deep dive, we'll talk about the shocking twist to their daily survival that nobody saw coming. Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next.
You definitely want to stick around for this part, because it really makes their current reality so poignant. We've traced the youthful mistakes, the midlife tragedies, and the professional peaks, sure.
Yeah.
But the sources from 2026 give us a look at the mechanics of their endurance today.
Yeah, how do 2 people in their late 90s reflect on surviving each other, and what is their daily formula for endurance?
Well, the picture of their life right now, in 2026, is very practical. Bill just turned 99 in March.
99.
Bonnie's 96, turning 97 this June. They have their family, including their son Michael, living nearby.
That's so nice.
And they are cared for by 2 women. One handles the business side of things, and the other manages healthcare. Bill has some trouble walking, and his memory isn't quite what it used to be, but Bonnie says she can still walk, and her memory is totally sharp.
It's the quiet, unglamorous reality of aging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a stark contrast to the Emmys or the wild days in 1950s New York, and yet their dynamic is still entirely intact.
It really is.
When a reporter recently asked Bill, this 99-year-old man, for the grand secret to 75 years of marriage, his response was just legendary.
I love this part. He just deadpans without missing a single beat. Don't.
It's the perfect comedic timing.
Yeah.
And it makes Bonnie just burst out laughing.
It's so good. So what does this all mean for us? The psychology beneath that joke is what you really need to take away from this.
Yeah.
The real secret isn't some grand romantic gesture or fluffy poetry. It's intensely pragmatic. Bill admits that Bonnie is the smarter one, she's the better actor, and so he just, quote, hangs on.
He just hangs on.
He hangs on. And on the flip side, Bonnie admits she is a very intense person. It is Bill's ability to find humor in every single day that saves her from her own intensity. They just act as counterweights to each other.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, their survival formula is based on sheer endurance, a lot of therapy later in life, and an incredibly deep mutual respect.
Yeah, therapy was huge for them.
Bonnie explicitly credits therapy and tough conversations for getting them through the later years. But beneath the therapy and the humor, There's this unshakable devotion.
Oh, absolutely.
Bill's recent quote to the Daily Mail really summarizes the emotional core of it all. At 99 years old, he looked at her and said, "I wouldn't be with anyone else in my life than this woman sitting next to me."
Wow. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was their tale. Bonnie summed it up by saying they survived by just taking it day by day, and eventually the days simply added up to 7 decades. You don't plan for 75 years, you just live today, and then you try to do it again tomorrow.
They accepted that they had to grow up together. They didn't enter the marriage as fully formed, perfect people.
Not at all.
They allowed each other the grace to make horrific mistakes, to be an angry young man, as Bonnie called Bill in his early years, and to slowly, painfully learn how to be the partners they eventually became.
This entire deep dive forces you to just reevaluate what a successful relationship actually looks like. William Daniels and Bonnie Bartlett's record-breaking marriage isn't a story of perfection. It's an absolute masterclass in surviving imperfection, navigating profound grief, and weathering the deeply unpredictable nature of human beings.
And it leaves you with a really provocative question to consider, especially when you contrast their lived experience with our modern culture.
Oh, this is a great point.
Right. Today's dating world is utterly obsessed with immediate boundary setting, identifying toxic traits on date 2, defining relationship labels, and establishing incredibly strict rules of engagement.
If one boundary is crossed, we are taught to immediately walk away.
Exactly. But looking at Bill and Bonnie, you have to wonder, is there a lost art to the unspoken evolution? Is there something to be said for the messy, extreme grace that allowed them to fail, to hurt each other, to grow up, and yet still eventually find their way back to each other over 75 years?
It really makes you wonder if our modern quest for the perfectly negotiated, completely painless relationship might actually prevent the kind of deep, unbreakable bond they built.
It's something to think about.
It definitely is. Well, you've been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture.
Always a wild ride.
Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and always remember to look for the messy, beautiful stories beneath the pristine headlines. Because sometimes the teacher with all the answers on TV is actually just a guy who spent 75 years figuring it out day by day.